In a sealed room, two dogs walked slowly down a line of skin swabs from total strangers. No symptoms to read, no scans, just smell. And one by one, they stop at the swabs of people whose bodies have quietly begun to change. If you walked into that room, you'd smell nothing. Clean plastic, maybe a faint hint of hand soap. To you, every swab is identical. And yet the dogs are right. They're pulling out a disease that no blood test on earth can catch this early. Parkinson's, sometimes before the person feels a single tremor. Not a sharper nose, not a lucky guess, not even a really good sniff. A completely different instrument, one running 300 million sense sensors, while your nose limps along with 6. Here's the strange part. Nobody designed dogs to do this. We just noticed they could. So how does an animal detect an illness that hasn't fully happened yet? One your own doctor would miss? That's the question we're chasing, and the answer starts inside the nose. To understand the trick, forget everything you think you know about smelling. Your nose and a dog's nose aren't the same gadget at different volumes. They're different machines. Start with the hardware. Inside your nose sit about 6 million scent receptors, tiny molecular catchers. A dog has around 300 million. Spread the smelling surface out flat, and in your nose it's about the size of a postage stamp. In a dog, it's the size of a pocket handkerchief. Then there's the wiring. The slice of brain a dog hands over to smell is, proportionally, about 40 times bigger than yours. Smelling isn't a side hobby for a dog. It's the main way it sees the world. But here's the part that turns better into different. When you breathe in, smelling and breathing share one path, so every sniff gets washed away the moment you exhale. A dog's nose splits the air. About 1/8 of every sniff peels off down a side channel built purely for smelling, while the rest heads to the lungs. A little fold of tissue keeps the two streams from mixing. So a dog can breathe out and keep smelling at the same time, stacking scent on scent instead of flushing it away. And then there's the secret second nose. Up in the roof of the mouth sits the vomeronasal organ, a whole extra smelling system, with its own nerves wired to its own patch of brain, built to read the chemical messages other animals leak without meaning to. Add it all up, and you don't get a better human nose. You get a chemical reading machine, which raises the real question, what is that machine actually reading? Here's a thought that sounds made up. A disease can have a smell, not the patient, the disease itself. When something goes wrong inside your body, your chemistry shifts. Cells run their machinery differently, and they start leaking tiny lightweight molecules called volatile organic compounds, VOCs for short. Think of them as the body's exhaust fumes. They drift out in your breath, your sweat, your skin, your urine, in amounts so small we measure them in parts per billion. Picture a single drop in a swimming pool. Your nose has no hope. A dog's barely breaks a sweat. We didn't figure this out from a dog, though. We figured it out from a woman named Joy Milne. Joy is a retired nurse from Scotland, born with a freakishly sharp sense of smell. Years before her husband Les was diagnosed with Parkinson's, she noticed he'd started to smell different, a faint, musky odor she couldn't explain. She said nothing for years. Who would believe it? But after Les was diagnosed, Joy met other Parkinson's patients, and every one of them carried that same musky smell. So scientists tested her. They handed her 12 t-shirts, 6 worn by people with Parkinson's, 6 by people without. Joy nailed all 6 patients. But she also flagged one of the healthy shirts as smelling of the disease. The scientists marked it wrong. Then, less than a year later, that exact person was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Joy hadn't made a mistake. She'd smelled it coming. That's when the chase truly began. If a human could smell it, what could a nose 300 million sensors strong do? In July 2025, a team from the universities of Bristol and Manchester, working with the charity Medical Detection Dogs, put that question to the test. Their stars, 2 dogs named Bumper, a golden retriever and Peanut Labrador. For up to a year, the dogs trained on more than 200 skin swabs, some from people with Parkinson's, some without. Parkinson's, it turns out, makes the skin overproduce an oily stuff called sebum, and that sebum carries the disease's chemical signature. Then came the real test, built to be impossible to cheat. 100 fresh swabs the dogs had never met, 40 from Parkinson's patients, 60 from healthy people. Double-blind, which means the handlers didn't know the answers either. Only a computer knew which swab was which. No accidental hints, no body language to read. The dogs walked the line, and they were right far more often than chance allows. The best dog cleared healthy people correctly 98% of the time, and caught true Parkinson's cases up to 80% of the time, even when patients had other illnesses muddying the scent. Now the honest part, these patients were already diagnosed. The dogs weren't predicting the future. But here's why it still matters. Parkinson's begins changing the body up to 20 years before the first tremor, and right now, there is no early test for it. None. The dogs proved the signal is real, sitting on the skin, waiting to be read. Catch that signal early enough, and years before symptoms stops being a story about one woman in Scotland. And once you realize what the dogs are doing, reading chemistry, not diagnosing one disease, the whole thing cracks wide open, because every illness leaks its own fingerprint. Cancer was first. Dogs have sniffed out lung, breast, prostate, and bladder cancers from breath and urine. In one 2024 trial with 1,400 people, dog and computer teams hit around 94% accuracy across 4 cancer types. Then malaria. In 2018, children in the Gambia wore socks overnight. Dogs sniffed the socks and picked out 7 in 10 infected kids, even the ones who felt perfectly fine. Then COVID. At Helsinki Airport in 2020, dogs sniffed passenger samples and flagged infections with around 92% accuracy in about 10 seconds, faster than any swab on the shelf. Same dog, same nose, 4 completely different diseases. It's not a Parkinson's detector or a cancer detector. It's a general-purpose chemical reader that happens to have a tail. But, and this is the catch, it doesn't always work this cleanly. The most careful, rigorous trials often get less dazzling numbers, and not every result holds up when another lab tries to repeat it. Which exposes the real problem with using a dog as a medical device. There just aren't enough of them, and the ones we have don't scale. Here's the trouble with a dog. It takes most of a year to train one. It gets tired, it gets bored, it can't work the night shift, and it can't print a result into your medical file. A miracle that can't scale isn't much use to a hospital with a waiting room full of people. So scientists are trying something wild, build the nose without the dog. They call it the electronic nose, a chip packed with chemical sensors that, together, sketch a fingerprint of whatever floats past, just like the receptors in a real one. At MIT, one team built a detector 200 times more sensitive than a dog's nose. 200 times. And yet, in the words of the scientist who built it, it's 100% dumber. Because a dog doesn't read a list of molecules, it feels a smell, a whole character, instantly, and just knows. Teaching a machine that instinct is the last, hardest piece, and it's exactly what artificial intelligence is finally starting to crack. So picture where this goes. You breathe into a tube at the pharmacy, a chip reads your exhaust fumes, an algorithm reads the chip, and you walk out knowing about a disease 20 years before it would have whispered its first symptom. No needle, no scanner, no year-long wait. That future doesn't exist yet, but it exists because of a dog named Bumper, a nurse named Joy, and a quiet line of skin swabs in a sealed lung. For all of history, your body has been broadcasting its secrets in a language we couldn't read. Dogs always could. And now, finally, we're learning to listen too.